Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome to the Books That Make You show. I'm Desiree Duffy, your host. And today we're talking about books that make you write your own true stories that spark the soul. The art of the memoir is more than just listing your life experiences in chronological order. Trust me, that's a biography. That's a different thing. And a lot of times new writers get that confused. And folks that write their memoirs, there's a lot more going on than just putting stuff down on the page. This involves taking a real poignant slice of your life and delivering a story that is actually a little bit less about you and more about your reader. At times, writers, from the unpublished to the jaded lifers, they need that fire lit under them to pursue the very complex work of self-exploration. This isn't easy. Acetylene torch songs, writing true stories to ignite the soul, provides that spark for memoirists and essayists seeking mentor-based instruction and inspiration. Our guest today is Sue Williams Silverman. She is an award-winning author of 8 works of nonfiction and poetry. Her previous book, How to Survive Death and Other Inconveniences, that's when I was first introduced to Sue, won the Gold Star in Foreword Reviews Indie Book of the Year Award and the Clara Johnson Award for Women's Literature. Other works include Lovesick, One Woman's Journey Through Sexual Addiction, made into a Lifetime movie, Because I Remember Terror, Father, I Remember You, which won the AWP Award, and the Pat Boone Fan Club. I love that one too. My Life as a White Anglo-Saxon Jew. She is faculty co-chair of the MFA writing program at Vermont College of Fine Arts. Sue, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Desiree. Thank you so much for having me, and it's great to see you. And thank you for all that you do for books and for writers. It's very much appreciated.
I'm just here helping spread some really wonderful messages like yours, because this show, it leans more toward readers. But if you read books, you a lot of times want to go over onto the writing side. And I think one of the very first things a lot of folks think of is writing their memoir. Because it's their story. They know their story inside and out. They're not necessarily making up, at least not making up too much of it. But it's a little bit different, I think, than what a lot of folks originally imagined. So can you please, in your own words, describe how the writer and memoirist and essayist, how you feel that works and what you're talking about in your book?
Sure, absolutely. That is a perfect question. So a memoir, real, as you mentioned, is a slice of a life. It's not a whole life. So when you think about writing your life, think about it sort of thematically. As Desiree mentioned, I've written 4 memoirs, and the first one is about growing up in my incestuous family. The second one is about recovering from sex addiction. The third one, which that funny title, The Pat Boone Fan Club, My Life as a White Anglo-Saxon Jew, is actually about my sort of misguided search for spirituality. And then the last, most recent one, How to Survive Death and Other Inconveniences, is really about my fear of death and, sort of all of that entails. So that's the first thing, is like, what part of your life do you really want to focus on? Then the second most important thing to understand is that when you write a memoir, it is not just about what happened to me. Like, you would not want to just say, well, this happened to me, then that happened to me, and then this next thing happened to me. That might be more sort of an autobiography, maybe what celebrities write. But for ordinary people like me, who really just are engaged in self-exploration, it's really discovering the metaphors of the experience, the story behind the story. So to do that, you really need to focus on kind of 2 voices. So every memoir really is comprised of 2 voices. The first voice, which I call in Acetylene Torch songs, the first voice is the unaware voice or the unaware narrator. And to some extent, that narrator does sort of say, well, this is what happened to me. So of course you do have the story down there, obviously. But then the aware narrator, who really is more the author, me, somebody in the present, writing now, but reflecting back on the past. What do I know now that I did not know then? It's almost like getting a second chance at life, except the second chance in some ways is even better because you control the narrator. You're writing to understand what it meant, so that I am writing to understand, what different events meant to me. And I can give you an example. So in this book, Acetylene Torch Songs, Writing True Stories to Ignite the Soul, the book in part is a craft book, covering different areas like voice structure, metaphor, things like that. But it also has personal essays in it. And I included the personal essays in order to sort of show what it was I was telling about in the book. So, for example, in a chapter about kind of writing your obsessions and understanding what the metaphor is for that obsession, there is an essay called The Robbery. And this essay is about when I was a little kid growing up, I was given this diamond and gold ring. It's my birthstone. Um, and I love this ring. But it was given to me by a jeweler who, as it turns out, was molesting one of my girlfriends. We were just like in maybe fourth grade. And at the same time, my father was molesting me. So at one point, I lost this ring. And I didn't understand its significance. Like, why did I want to hold on to this ring until I wrote about it? So, as it turns out, what I discovered through the writing of this essay is that this ring was really a metaphor for both the loss that I felt in my childhood, sort of for the inappropriateness of these gifts. And so, while I lost the ring and I mourned the loss of it, the bigger loss, of course, was the loss of my childhood. But I wouldn't have known anything. I mean, initially, the ring was just the ring that I was given, and I liked the ring. But not until I wrote about it did I understand that it was really a metaphor, not for, so it wasn't really about the ring itself, it was about the loss of my own self.
That is so poignant, and you've got so many incredible things that, and I guess that's why we have the book, because really, in order to take that deep dive into all of that, one should read the book. But using objects and using metaphor like that, I think, is just an amazing way to explore theme. And you mentioned theme as well. And it seems that sometimes a memoir writer, well, all writers, I think, struggle with theme to some effect. But somebody writing their life story might be like, I don't have a theme, I have a life. But in doing that reflective writing, like you're talking about, and having those 2 points of view, you're actually uncovering the theme of your own life.
Exactly. So, like the theme, say, the theme is a kind of an abstract, like I could say my first book was about growing up in my incestuous family. That's sort of a fact. The theme of it really is about loneliness, alienation, loss of childhood, uh, seeking love, stuff like that, or lovesick. Yes, on the face of it, it's about sex addiction. But the theme of it, again, is about loss of self, looking for love sort of in all the wrong places. And so our lives have lots of themes. And so when you're writing, we sort of write to understand what those themes are. And and in doing so, you will discover the metaphors. And just to clarify, because metaphor can sound sort of very I don't know, complicated maybe, but it's not. All a metaphor is, so I just talked to you, I just mentioned that diamond ring that I had. So in the real world, it's just a ring. In writing, it becomes a metaphor for this feeling of loss that I felt. And so a metaphor is just like a tangible object that we have, and it can be anything, any kind of tangible object. And the way you craft it, the way you describe it, conveys a certain feeling around it. So in this sense, the way I describe the ring would be in a way that conveys a sense of loss.
And you've written many memoirs. I think that might be a misconception too, is folks are like, I have one life, therefore I have one memoir. And you're taking all of these instances, and like you just said, our lives have different themes. And that hit me because it's like, yeah, the theme of my life when I was growing up, like yours, was very different than the theme of my life now. And I love that. And you also mentioned an ordinary person like me. Can you talk a little bit about maybe yeah, sure, celebrities, it's easy for them to have a memoir, right? And they probably have ghostwriters, and we could go down that rabbit hole. But talk about just ordinary people telling their stories, if you could.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, everybody really does have a story. And traditionally, there have been a lot of underrepresented voices, like women, survivors of domestic violence, BIPOC writers, LGBTQ plus writers. I mean, our voices have traditionally been silenced by sort of mainstream media. And that's wrong. I mean, that's, we have a voice, and it's really important to put those stories out there because, like, say, when I was writing about child sexual abuse, I would get so many emails from particularly women who would, say, "Oh, thank you for telling my story." And so when I'm speaking for myself, yes, I'm telling my story, but I'm speaking for so many other people. And by putting the word out there that, yes, child abuse is a really, invasive, pervasive, terrible thing, people have to know about it. And if we just sit silently in our own little rooms or in our heads, then nobody talks about it. Or sex addiction. My book, Lovesick, was the first memoir on that subject written by a woman. And so I got hundreds of emails from people saying, "Oh, I didn't even know that's what I was struggling with." And so that is the importance of personal narrative really is twofold. It is important for me, if for writers, to help us understand our own lives, because as I mentioned, I didn't know what that ring meant to me until I wrote about it. I didn't know what anything really means to me until I write about it. So yes, for me, it's important for me as a writer to get my narrative down so I can make sense of my own life. And by doing that, I get to control the narrative and figure things out. Additionally, it's really important for the readers out there to be able to connect with our stories. So it's about human connection. You know, if I write sort of from a vulnerable place, if I write from my soul and really be emotionally authentic, then I will touch your soul. And then we have this human connection. And I think that that's what creative nonfiction, memoir, personal essay can do. It really helps us sort of gather together. And it's very empowering. It's empowering for me as a writer. It's empowering, I think, for the reader to have that human connection. And to me, that's why this genre really is very popular and important.
Oh, you're nailing it, because that authenticity, that honesty, and that truth, if that doesn't come through on the page, it's the memoir is usually going to fall flat. And sometimes you can tell, can't you, when you're reading a memoir? It's like, oh, they're telling me the veneer of the story that they want us to know, or maybe even that they're telling themselves, but really there was so much more going on. And what you got to bare your soul,
You
don't
do.
you?
You have to have courage. You have to have tenacity. You have to be willing to sort of sit in that dark place and really get, is inside of your soul, your body, your mind, your heart as deeply as possible. And that scares some people. But here's the thing: you as a writer, just remember that you already survived what happened to you. You've already done that. Now it's really a big plus because now you have the opportunity to make sense of it. You get to understand what that thing happened in the past. What did that mean? So now I get to write it. I make sense of it. I sort of control that narrative so that, like let's say with what my father did to me, he doesn't have that power or control over me the way he used to because I've written the memoir. I've got it out of me. It's out in the world. And so I feel lighter, I feel freer. So even though in the moment it might feel scary to write your narrative, just know, as I say, that you've already survived it in the living of it. And now you get to discover what it really meant. Then it's finished, it's out of you, and you will feel lighter and better.
Absolutely. That gets me. That is so true. That power, the shift in power, that right there is something you find in all stories, whether it's a memoir, fiction. Um, when the power shifts, when the villain suddenly doesn't have control anymore, think of all the great stories. That's usually the climax. So you're right. After that, someone's life can move on. You can
Just
go
take a
forward.
deep breath and move forward. Yes. And when we have our obsessions, we have a tendency to sort of ruminate on them and they just stay there in our heads and like, oh gosh, that won't let me go. Well, the way to let it go is to write about it. As soon as I write about it, I just feel, I really literally feel lighter. I just feel, um, okay, I understand that now. But of course, then I have another obsession to write about. So there's always another story.
And that's exactly how life is, right? Then you move on to the next stage, the next thing. And that obsession, that rumination, we've all had that where you replay the scene over and over and
Over and
over.
over in your head. It's like stuck in your head. And
Yeah.
if you just write it, you make sense of it, you get it out, it's done.
Can you talk about the importance of humor? Because you have such a witty, fun, poignant, and deep sense of humor in a lot of ways. Can you talk about infusing humor into writing?
Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me because a lot of, people, when they see the titles of my book, they don't immediately think
They
humor.
don't get it. They don't. What's that mean? They take it literally rather than.
Yeah. But I think that sort of the humor that I use, I think, is more highly ironic. And the irony of situations, I think, is very important when, in before I was talking about that unaware voice and that aware voice. And the aware voice, who really is sort of the author making sense of stuff, we sort of have to look back at parts of our lives and find the irony to it because like in How to Survive Death and Other Inconveniences. I mean, that book is obviously I'm not going to survive death. Well, I mean, I really want to, but you have to write. I mean, I really have this fear of death, but it's sort of nonsensical. So I sort of have to kind of poke fun at myself a little bit and understand the humor behind it because I mean, I'm such a hypochondriac. And so that's part of the book is like this lifelong fear of like, oh my God, if I have a headache, it's a brain tumor. I mean, I can't just accept that I happen to have a headache. And so I spend my life worrying about things like that. And then I just scare myself more. And so I've got to poke fun at myself. And so the humor, I want to be clear, is really at my own expense and at my own sort of obsessions. Like, Sue, really, you're obsessed with, dying. I mean, just get over it. It's going to happen. So, don't. So I really try to poke fun at myself and look at how ironic things are that have happened to me, like in Lovesick. So, you know, it's more or less about recovering from sex addiction, but of course, it's also about the addiction itself. And that I couldn't see that all of these dangerous men I was having affairs with were not going to love me. I mean, it was just like, Sue, you couldn't figure that out. I mean, it really was looking for love in all the wrong places because for me, the addiction really was a search for love. And, just to keep doing these bad behaviors over and over. In the time, it was not funny, of course, or ironic. I was just like I was a mess. But now writing about it, I have to see sort of the irony of the situation, to understand that. So I appreciate your seeing that, sort of the irony that with which I write. And as I say, that is part of that aware voice. It's being able to see sort of our stories in this sort of broader way. So it's not just all grim and, just a real downer. It really is seeing the sadness, but also the vulnerability, also the humor and the irony, just to sort of see a life in its entirety.
I think we often underestimate or disregard the power of humor because in using it, just like you said, when you're looking back, that again feeds into that being able to move on, being able to reflect on it, and just positioning it in a new light. And it happens, Mel Brooks could not have made a movie about Hitler right after World War II, right?
Oh,
When you have that
exactly.
time to go back and reflect, then almost anything can be framed with humor, including one's own life.
Yes, exactly. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
All right, for the writer out there, somebody who's considering, we've got them on the hook, Sue. They want to do this, and in addition to reading your amazing book, what first tips can you give them?
So I think that you have to really feel a sense of a desire to understand the self. I mean, if you really, yes, we can learn a lot about ourselves in therapy, but this is another way of understanding the self. So, first of all, it's really important to have that drive, that need to do that sort of deep dive into your heart, into your soul, and be willing to kind of sit with whatever it is you're going to discover. Because what you think you might discover, it may be something else altogether. So, first, just really have that commitment to do this and know that what you learn from it will be so enriching. I mean, to really, like, so during the day, I just sort of slog through life like anybody. We sort of slog through hoping things get done or not get done. But to me, it's sort of sad if I don't take the time. I have this one life. I really want to understand it. So, for somebody who feels like they're a writer, do you really want to understand what this big old life that you have, to really understand it and to make sense of it, and to know that your words will make a difference, not only to yourself, but to others as well. So it's really, about being open to the process. And, if you need to take some writing classes, you do that, but really making that commitment both in terms of time and in terms of emotion.
So you recommend that somebody can also reach out to a writing coach or a mentor or somebody to help them on their writing journey?
Sure. I mean, obviously, I'd love you just to read my book, but frequently, it's also nice to have a writing community. Like I teach at Vermont College of Fine Arts, this low residency writing program, and sure, my students they all read craft books. They also get additional input, of course, from me as their faculty mentor. So, I mean, it does help to be in some sort of kind of community where you're with other people who are struggling like you are. So if you're having a really bad day and you can't even write one good sentence, you can even call up a friend and say, "Hey, I can't write today," and they say, "Well, I can't either, but tomorrow, we'll be able to write." So it's just belonging to kind of your own sort of people.
Yeah. I think it's always a good idea to find your tribe, whether it's beta readers or it could be a writing coach, help with developmental editing, that kind of philosophy behind your writing is always good. Don't feel that you need to sit off on an island by yourself penning your words. And if you get stuck, there should be folks that can help you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
What is next? Do you got another memoir in the works? What you
Well,
doing
I
next?
do. I mean, it does get a little embarrassing, maybe that. So yes, so I've written these two memoirs, which are sort of like with a straight through narrative. Then the two essay collections uh, sort of came next, but the essay collections do, as I mentioned, revolve around have a thematic core to them. So I just am finishing up another essay collection. And I say embarrassing because like really one person gets to write what 5 books about themselves. But yes, I think that the answer can just be yes, I do. Because I have I have a lot to say. But this essay collection is called Enchanting Sorrows, but they're all flash pieces. They're very short because what I've learned is that I don't have like another long straight through narrative, say like Lovesick. That's like one long narrative. But I now see my life sort of in these shorter sort of flash moments that still had like a sudden impact on me.
Mhm.
So I'm working on those. And and then of course right now I'm, trying to you know, also I'm teaching and I just became co-chair of my writing department, so that's exciting. But it's a lot of work. And then of course I want to get the word out about acetylene torch songs. So I'm very busy, but I can't really thank you for holding that up. I can't really imagine a life without writing. And I've also written 2 poetry collections. It's just what I find interesting is that initially I just saw my life in these huge chunks, like, 300 pages. And now I'm seeing them in these smaller little pieces that can all be put together to form a whole. But I do see it in sort of, basically, for those not familiar with the term, flash creative nonfiction just means something short. So that it could be about 700 to maybe 1,500 words. They're just these really short little essays that you can publish individually, which I've been doing some, but also you can gather them together into a collection, which is what, of course, I'm trying to do. Yeah,
I love it. And I do love the cover of your book. And thank you for sending me the physical copy.
of course.
I love the art too. It's very subtle, but it has like these flame type abstract shapes on it. It's really neat.
Thank you. Yes. Well, yes, you know, the idea of acetylene torch songs is just sort of like we do have these sort of fiery, important narratives to tell. And, a torch song is something that really touches your heart. It goes really deep. And so the title seemed to sort of fit. And then the subtitle of, writing true stories to ignite the soul. I think that's what we're really trying to do in creative nonfiction. So, as you mentioned, it's not just saying like this happened and then this happened, as we were talking about. You can do that, and that's okay, but it's not really turning your life into art. And I think that's at its core, creative nonfiction is taking a life and turning it into art. And in that sense, creative nonfiction is every bit as artful as fiction or poetry. And that's what we want to do. But to do that, you do need to sort of, as I said, sort of discover your metaphors, reflect on your life, and just ignite your soul so that it really does kind of scorch the page in a way, but in a good way. But so that you really are making your life as something as this work of art.
Taking your life and turning it into art, scorching the page. My God, it rolls right out of you, Sue. It's beautiful. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you. Well, I've spent a long time with this genre and it means a lot to me.
It shows. It shows. It shows on the page. It shows in your personality. Here talking to you, your wonderful book, giving back to people too, so that people can help. You're helping people write their own stories by teaching everything that you do. Thank you so much. Can you give folks your details, your website? Where can they go to find you, find the book?
Sure, absolutely. So my website is www.suewilliamsilverman.com. That's all one word, SUEWILLIAMSILVERMAN. I'm also, if you can find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Fantastic. Sue William Silverman, author of Acetylene Torch Songs. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Books That Make You show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just always a delight to talk to you. It really is. And I just love how much you care about writers and books. So, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. That's what the show's all about. And we have a whole community. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today, whether you're on mystar95.com or maybe listening as a podcast from your favorite location or on YouTube. You hear us talk about holding up the book. So make sure you head on over to YouTube. You can subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications and all that stuff. Leave some comments. That helps the channel grow and grow and grow so we can continue to share these wonderful stories. Until next time, everybody, please enjoy. Please find out more about us too on the Books That Make You website. That's booksthatmakeyou.com. And we're on Facebook and we're on Instagram too. I almost forgot. And TikTok. Until we meet again, please, everybody, enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.